Ah, look who's standing exactly where they said they'd be. You absolute architects of your own empire, welcome back. Or maybe I should say, welcome to the timeline you called shot by shot while they laughed, doubted, and placed bets on your downfall. Because if you're still here, still watching, still breathing, you're not the person they left behind. You're the prophecy they thought was delusion. You're the future they swore would never come. You're the nightmare dressed in everything they said you'd never achieve. And oh, the way their eyes burn now. The way their throats close when your name comes up. The way they refresh your page, check your status, measure their mediocrity against your rise. Let me ask you something. How does it feel to be a fortune teller? How does it feel to have called every single card before it fell? Because you did, didn't you? You said you'd walk away, and you walked. You said you'd heal, and you healed. You said you'd build something they couldn't touch, and now they're standing outside the gates, squinting through the bars, trying to figure out how you turned pain into power, silence into strength, and abandonment into absolute victory. They thought you were talking big. They thought you were coping. They thought those late-night declarations, those tear-soaked promises to yourself, those whispered "watch me" moments were just emotional theatrics. But you weren't performing. You were programming reality. And reality, my beautiful, stubborn, unbreakable creatures, just hit execute. Here's what they didn't understand about you. When you said you'd choose yourself, they heard surrender. When you said you'd let them go, they heard defeat. When you said you'd focus on your own path, they heard retreat. But you were writing the script to a movie they'd pay to watch later. You were coding the algorithm that would put you on every screen they can't escape. You were planting seeds in soil they didn't even know existed, and now the harvest is choking their airways. Because choosing yourself wasn't the end of your story. It was the prologue to their torment. Every prediction you made, every goal you set, every version of yourself you described when you were at your lowest, it's all here now. It's all real. It's all undeniable. And they have to live in a world where you were right, and they were spectacularly, publicly, painfully wrong. They're watching you now with the kind of attention they should have given you when you needed it. They're analyzing your moves with the kind of focus they should have used to understand you when you were still accessible. They're memorizing your patterns with the kind of obsession they should have invested in keeping you. But you don't need their attention now. You don't want their focus now. You don't value their obsession now. Because the you that craved their validation, dead. The you that needed their approval, buried. The you that would have settled for their leftovers, extinct. And in its place stands the architect, the one who saw the blueprint when everyone else saw ruins, the one who believed the vision when everyone else saw delusion, the one who bet on themselves when the entire room was betting against them. Let's go back to that moment, shall we? That moment when you finally chose you. That moment when you looked at everything, everyone, that was draining you, dimming you, doubting you, and you said the word that changed everything. No, not a loud no, not a dramatic no, not a no that came with explanations or justifications or apologies. Just no, simple, final, terrifying in its certainty. And they didn't take you seriously, did they? They thought you'd come back. They thought you'd crack. They thought the loneliness would break you. The silence would scare you. The journey would humble you back into their arms, their spaces, their little boxes of control. But you didn't come back. You didn't crack. You didn't beg. You didn't break. You got quiet. And in that quiet, you got dangerous. You stopped arguing and started building. You stopped explaining and started executing. You stopped trying to prove your worth to people who were committed to undervaluing you, and you started investing every ounce of that energy into the only person who was going to give you a return, yourself. And oh, they watched. From a distance, they tried to pretend was indifference. They watched. Through mutual friends, through social media, through that sick psychological need to know if you were suffering without them. They watched, and at first, they smiled. At first, they felt validated. At first, your silence looked like exactly what they wanted it to look like: defeat. But then something shifted. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into that agonizing stretch where they realized you weren't coming back. You weren't falling apart. You weren't giving them the satisfaction of a breakdown they could screenshot and share. You were gone. Actually gone. Not geographically, not physically, but energetically, emotionally, spiritually. You had exited their dimension entirely. And that's when the first prediction started manifesting. You said you'd be fine without them. They said you'd regret it. The scoreboard? You, thriving. Them, stalking your page at 2 a.m, wondering what changed. You said you'd find peace. They said you'd find loneliness. The scoreboard? You, sleeping through the night for the first time in years. Them, lying awake wondering why they can't stop thinking about you. You said you'd build something beautiful. They said you'd fail without their support. The scoreboard? You, creating empires. Them, still gossiping about you because their own lives provide nothing worth discussing. Every single thing you said would happen when you chose yourself has happened. Not because you're magic, not because you're special, but because you understood something they never could. The person who bets on themselves never loses. The house always wins when you are the house. And now they're trapped, aren't they? Trapped in a prison of their own making. A prison where every bar is a memory of how they treated you. Every wall is a reminder of what they lost. Every corner echoes with the things they said that aged like milk in the sun. They're watching you, and it's killing them. Not because they miss you, though some of them do. Not because they want you back, though some of them desperately wish they could undo their arrogance. But because watching you succeed, watching you glow, watching you become everything you said you would, forces them to confront a truth they've been running from their entire lives. They were the problem, not you. You weren't difficult. They were incapable. You weren't too much. They were insufficient. You weren't broken. They just didn't have the tools to appreciate wholeness. And that realization, that soul-crushing, ego-destroying realization, is something they have to carry every single time they see you winning. Every promotion you get is a reminder they underestimated you. Every boundary you set is a reminder they overstepped. Every smile on your face is a reminder that you found happiness without them, and that happiness is real, sustainable, untouchable. They thought they were irreplaceable in your life. They thought their absence would create a void that would consume you. They thought you'd spend years trying to fill the space they left, but you didn't fill it. You renovated it. You turned that empty space into a sanctuary. You turned that void into a foundation. You turned their absence into the best thing that ever happened to you. And they know it. They can feel it. They can see it in every post, every picture, every update that shows a version of you they never got to experience because they were too busy trying to control, critique, or contain you. The irony is suffocating, isn't it? They had access to you when you were still figuring yourself out, still breaking patterns, still learning boundaries. They had front row seats to your transformation. They could have been part of your rise. They could have celebrated your growth. They could have supported your vision. But they chose mockery. They chose doubt. They chose to be obstacles instead of allies. And now? Now they're in the nosebleed section, watching through binoculars, paying full price for a show they could have experienced for free if they'd just believed in you when belief cost them nothing. You told them this would happen. You told them you'd be fine. You told them you'd be better. You told them you'd be everything they said you couldn't be. And they laughed. They dismissed. They rolled their eyes and made jokes and placed bets with their friends about how long until you came crawling back. But the punchline is on them now. The joke is their life. The bet they lost is their peace of mind. Because you didn't crawl back. You didn't stumble. You didn't fall. You flew. And now they're stuck on the ground, necks craned, watching you soar, wondering how someone they discarded became someone they can't stop thinking about. Let's talk about what you did while they were busy underestimating you. Let's talk about the work they didn't see, the sacrifices they'll never understand, the discipline they couldn't fathom. Because your rise wasn't luck, it wasn't timing, it wasn't some cosmic accident that fell in your lap while you were sitting around hoping things would change. No, you engineered this. You architected this. You bled for this in ways they'll never comprehend because they've never had to fight for their own respect. While they were sleeping, you were strategizing. While they were scrolling, you were studying. While they were complaining about their circumstances, you were creating new ones. You took every ounce of pain they caused you and converted it into fuel. You took every moment of loneliness and turned it into focus. You took every second of silence and transformed it into clarity. You didn't waste your healing. You didn't squander your solitude. You didn't treat your alone time like punishment. You treated it like preparation. Preparation for the life you described when you were at your lowest. Preparation for the person you promised yourself you'd become. Preparation for this exact moment when everyone who doubted you would have no choice but to watch you prove them wrong without saying a single word. And the discipline required for that? The consistency demanded by that? The unwavering belief needed for that? They don't have it. They never will. Because discipline is born from desire, and they were never hungry enough. They were comfortable in mediocrity. They were content in chaos. They were satisfied with surface-level existence. But you tasted something different. You felt the weight of your own potential. You saw glimpses of who you could become if you just removed everyone and everything standing in your way. And instead of being scared of that vision, instead of shrinking from that responsibility, instead of making excuses about why now wasn't the right time, you chose it. You chose the hard road. You chose the lonely road. You chose the road everyone said was impossible. And every single day, even when you wanted to quit, even when you questioned if you made the right choice, even when their voices echoed in your head telling you that you'd fail, you kept walking. You kept building. You kept believing, not in some abstract concept of the universe has a plan, but in yourself, in your ability to learn, in your capacity to adapt, in your refusal to accept a life smaller than the one you envisioned. And prediction by prediction, brick by brick, day by day, you built the empire they said would never stand. You created the life they said you didn't deserve. You became the person they insisted you could never be. And the most beautiful part? You did it quietly. You did it without announcements. You did it without needing their validation or their applause or their permission. You did it because you knew something they'll spend their entire lives trying to understand. Your worth was never up for debate. Your value was never determined by their opinion. Your future was never dependent on their belief. You were always going to make it. The only question was whether you'd do it with them or without them. And thank the stars, thank fate, thank whatever force intervened, you chose without. Because with them, you'd be a diluted version of this, a compromised version of this, a smaller, quieter, dimmer version of this. But without them, you're nuclear, you're undiluted. You're the full, uncut, unfiltered version of everything you were always meant to be. And here's the twist they never saw coming. Here's the plot development that's eating them alive. You don't need their validation anymore. You don't want their apology. You don't crave their acknowledgement. There was a time when you would have given anything to hear them say, "I was wrong about you. I'm sorry." You were right. There was a version of you that fantasized about the moment they'd finally see your worth and come back. Humbled, apologetic, begging for another chance. But that version of you died in the fire you used to forge this new one. And this version? This version looks at their potential apology and feels nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction. Not even the bittersweet ache of closure. Just nothing. Because you've transcended the need for their acknowledgement. You've evolved past the point where their opinion carries weight. You've ascended to a level where their validation is irrelevant. Their regret is meaningless. Their realization came too late to matter. And that indifference is the most devastating thing you could give them. Because they can handle your anger. They can handle your pain. They can even handle your success if they think you still care what they think about it. But your indifference, your genuine, authentic, bone-deep disinterest in their thoughts, feelings, or regrets, that breaks them, that haunts them, that keeps them up at night wondering how they went from being the center of your world to not even being a blip on your radar. You chose yourself, and in doing so, you chose a life where their presence became optional, then unnecessary, then completely irrelevant. They're watching you now, trying to find some crack, some weakness, some sign that you still think about them, still hurt from what they did, still carry the weight of their betrayal. But there's nothing there. Not because you're pretending, not because you're performing strength, but because you genuinely moved on, you genuinely healed. You genuinely built a life so full, so rich, so aligned with who you actually are, that there's no room for them in it anymore. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, but out of simple, undeniable truth. They don't fit in this version of your life. They don't match this frequency. They don't belong in this chapter. And every single day that you continue to rise, to grow, to glow without them, that truth becomes more obvious, more painful, more impossible for them to ignore. They're watching your predictions come true, and they're realizing they were never part of the vision. They were the obstacle you had to overcome to reach it. They were the weight you had to drop to fly. They were the lesson you had to learn to level up. And now they're stuck in the past, replaying conversations, rewriting history in their heads, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. While you're in the future, creating realities they can't even imagine, living a life they'll never touch, becoming a legend in real time. Let's put this in terms even they can understand. Let's make it statistical. Let's make it measurable. Let's make it so undeniable that even their most loyal defenders, even their most committed enablers, even the people still holding on to the narrative that you were the problem, have to admit defeat. Prediction 1. You said you'd be happier without them. Current status? Your mental health is the best it's ever been. Your energy is protected. Your peace is non-negotiable. Your joy is authentic. Your smile reaches your eyes now. The weight you carried when they were around, that invisible burden that made everything harder, heavier, more exhausting, it's gone. You sleep better. You breathe easier. You exist without that constant low-level anxiety that comes from being around people who don't truly value you. They said you'd regret leaving. The data says otherwise. Prediction 2. You said you'd accomplish more on your own. Current status? Every goal you set when you chose yourself has either been achieved or is actively in progress. The projects they said would fail are thriving. The dreams they called unrealistic are manifesting. The timeline they said was impossible is ahead of schedule. You're not just surviving without them. You're excelling. You're innovating. You're creating at a level you never could when their doubt was background noise in every decision you made. They said you needed them. The results prove you needed their absence. Prediction 3. You said you'd attract better. Current status? The people in your life now, the relationships you've built, the connections you've made, they're on a completely different level. They support you. They celebrate you. They challenge you in ways that make you grow, not in ways that make you shrink. They see your vision and help you build it instead of questioning why you have it. They respect your boundaries instead of testing them. They add to your life instead of draining from it. The upgrade is so obvious, so dramatic, so undeniable that even they can see it, and it kills them. Because they had a chance to be in this circle, and they fumbled it. They had an opportunity to be part of this era, and they wasted it. Prediction 4. You said you'd stop dimming your light for anyone. Current status? You're blinding. You're unapologetic. You're fully expressed. You're taking up space without shrinking. You're speaking your truth without filtering. You're pursuing your goals without downplaying them to make others comfortable. The version of you that would minimize achievements to avoid triggering their insecurity? Gone. The version of you that would hide your wins to keep the peace? Extinct. The version of you that would play small to make them feel big? Buried. You're operating at full capacity now, full volume, full brightness, full power. And anyone who can't handle that, anyone who's threatened by that, anyone who needs you to dim to feel secure, they don't get access anymore. They don't get proximity. They don't get to benefit from your light while complaining it's too bright. They're out, permanently. And the people who can handle your shine, who celebrate it, who bask in it, and shine brighter themselves because of it, they're in, they're close, they're protected. They're part of the future you're building. The scoreboard is clear. Every prediction you made when you chose yourself has come true or is actively manifesting. Every doubt they expressed has been disproven. Every limitation they tried to place on you has been shattered. Every ceiling they said you'd hit has been broken through, and they have to live with that. They have to wake up every day knowing they were wrong, you were right, and there's nothing they can do to change that narrative now. It's written, it's documented, it's undeniable. You called it, you executed it, you proved it, and they're forever the people who didn't believe in the person everyone else now sees as inevitable. But let's not just focus on where you are. Let's talk about where you're going. Because this is just the beginning. This is the foundation. This is the prologue to a story they'll tell about you for years. You chose yourself once, and it changed everything. But the beautiful, terrifying, absolutely unstoppable truth is that you're going to keep choosing yourself. Every day, every decision, every opportunity, every moment where you could slip back into old patterns, old people, old versions of yourself that were more convenient for others but devastating for you, you're going to choose you. And that consistency, that unwavering commitment to your own growth, your own goals, your own peace, it's going to compound, it's going to multiply. It's going to create results that make your current success look like the warm-up. You're building momentum they can't stop. You're creating opportunities they can't access. You're developing skills they can't replicate. You're cultivating a mindset they can't comprehend. And with every passing day, the gap between where you are and where they are widens. Not because you're trying to beat them, not because you're competing with them, but because you're on a completely different path, playing a completely different game, operating in a completely different dimension. They're still fighting yesterday's battles. You're building tomorrow's empire. They're still trying to prove they were right about you. You're too busy being right about yourself to care what they thought. They're still stuck in the story of what happened. You're writing new chapters they'll never be part of.